That's a really good question, and you're right, there is a plethora out there, and picking your way through. We looked at a number between Claire and myself, and we also had a consultant working with us at the time, who was working with us on an interim basis. We had a lot of experience of systems as well. We whittled it down really to Ciphr because of the adaptability of the system, because we could control it. So we didn't constantly, every time we wanted to change something, have to go back to the provider to change it. That just doesn't work with our culture of pace. So thinking that we were going to have to perhaps wait for 2 or 3 weeks for development to take place just was counterintuitive. And I'll give you an idea. Claire was off. And Claire is our systems person, and we make no bone about that. We do nothing without consulting with Claire. However, when she's off, we have to. And my chief commercial officer had found it difficult to find his payslip on the system. So I kept over chat, giving him directions, and he said, I just can't find it. And I said, right, that's it, I'm coming to visit, because this is crazy. So I went to visit him, and I said, why can't you find it? It's under documents. And he said, well, why doesn't it say payslips? It's a good point. Why doesn't it say payslips? Because actually it's not my system, it's your system. So I said, leave it with me. So I thought Claire's going to kill me when she comes back from holiday and finds that I've just changed the system. But I went back to my desk, and I am not an expert, because I don't do that day in and day out. And I was able very quickly to find through the back end system how to change that tab, how to rename it payslips and documents. Literally clicked on it, got it working. I mean, we do have great support from the help desk too, but on this occasion I didn't need to ring them. Went back to the guy and said to him, can you just go and have a look on your system now and see what you see? And he was like, oh my goodness, that is amazing. So for us, there were several things. One is, did we have a system that we could scale? We knew we would change, we just didn't know how we would change. Could we find somebody who was really going to partner with our culture and recognise how important this pace and constant development was? And then we had the privilege of being able to go and visit a site where it was really operating. And, you know, through our contacts and through Ciphr introducing us, we went to see, at the time it was ASOS, and their people director there literally sat us in front of the system and showed us how they develop it. Now, it will always be very personal. If you look at our system, it's very different. It looks very different from probably any other Ciphr interface, because we wanted it to look like an extension of who we are. But what that gave us was the ability to imagine the potential of the system. And we didn't see that in any other system that we looked at. But it is very personal to you, and finding something that you think will fit your culture and your growth and your plans for the future is critical. It's a great question, because we had quite a lot of change management to go through too, both for us internally. So, you know, my finance team were the ones when I arrived who really owned the people data. That's not unusual in a very entrepreneurial business, but, you know, from an HR perspective, that was disaster. And I remember our finance team turned around and said to me, but if all of this is automated, what do we do then? And I said, that's when the magic begins, because then we start adding real value. Administering staff does not add value. So we did a lot of process mapping, where we were and where we wanted to be, and where the big black holes were, because we touched a lot manually. When people wanted to know anything, they said, I'll speak to Claire. And I said to Claire, you've got to get to a point where people say, Claire who? And so we had to really re-engineer our thinking, because Claire, you know, is a great, great business partner and really wanted to help people. But when you've got staff who want to access their information 24/7 and Claire's gone home, that doesn't work. When people ask the same question time and time again, we failed, because that should be at their fingertips. We have a plethora of benefits, really diverse, but we needed people to be able to understand what the benefits were and take advantage of them. So there was a big change program for us, and then we spoke to a lot of the business and talked to them about, what do you want, what are you frustrated by, how can we help you? We engaged a lot with our managers and said, you are going to have to own this data. So it's all very well if somebody's off sick, but if you never put that information in, we'll never be able to report against it. So we really worked with our managers predominantly on what we were looking for. And then we did a whole launch around the system. Claire created booklets that were all branded that people could go and access. And we just promoted it and led up to a go live date, which of course did mean that we couldn't then slip that go live date. But people came back and it just sat there. And the great thing about Ciphr, I think, is it really, when you first log in, takes you on a journey, which is why I think people engage with it so much and put so much information in. But in many respects, we've launched it twice, because when we acquired USwitch, they had a HR system, we had an HR system. We'd implemented around about the same time. We're all very precious, aren't we, about invented here, but we didn't want them to feel we acquired you, so we'll tell you what to do. So Claire, who is the main user of the system and the main user of the USwitch, I said, it's got to be your decisions and you need to tell us which is the best system. But if I were you, I'd start by, what does all of the system, what does the functionality of each of the systems do? And then where does that information go? What does it link into? So we outsourced payroll during our first year. So that was a key connector. And so they did that mapping, and Ciphr and the development that had happened within my place was huge. And the development on the other system, whose name I won't mention, but I could tell you offline, that was really quite tiny. And so it was sort of a no-brainer. But it is about, we constantly are promoting the system. We're constantly talking to people. And when people come to see us or ring us up, we say to them, have you gone to my place? And now they look at us and they go, hang on a second, have I gone to my place? They do it themselves now. But you've got to be really consciously strong about that. And we had to re-engineer ourselves as well, because we needed to automate.